The Virek Dominion's capital city, Korvac Prime, was alive with light and music. Bright banners stretched between towers of black stone, and huge screens showed the face of the guest of honor. Alien crowds filled the great plaza, their voices joining in chants of pride and loyalty. The celebration was for one reason only. Commander Tharx had returned home. He was a hero to his people. His armor, dark silver and lined with battle scars, gleamed under the city lights. Medals hung from his chest plate, each one earned in wars fought on distant worlds. Tharx had been the Dominion's sword for decades, leading fleets to victory against the Zark marauders, the crystalline Taven, and the machine hordes of the Pharaoh Mech. But despite his victories, there was something in his eyes that didn't match the cheers around him. His gaze was steady, but there was a heaviness behind it, as if he carried a story no one else wanted to hear. After the parades and speeches, Tharx was invited to the Grand Hall of Valor. There, young cadets from the Dominion Fleet Academy gathered to meet him. They looked at him like he was a living legend, each one eager to hear tales of war and triumph. One cadet, tall and eager, stepped forward. His name was Virel, and he was the top student of his class. "Commander Tharx," Virel began, "you have fought more battles than any other living officer. Tell us, what was the most dangerous enemy you ever faced? Who was the strongest?" The room fell silent. Everyone expected Tharx to name one of the Dominion's famous foes. Maybe the Zark were Pax, with their bloodlust and clawed ships, or the T-Rel mind-weavers who could twist thoughts with a whisper. But Tharx didn't answer right away. His 4 eyes blinked slowly, his hands tightening on the arms of his chair. For the first time that evening, the great commander seemed unsettled. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but firm. "The strongest, the most dangerous, were not the Zark, not the T-Rel, not any of the great powers you've studied in your histories." The cadets leaned in. They were a species most of the galaxy ignored. Fragile bodies, short lifespans, a home world far from the great trade. Roots. When I first heard of them, I thought they were no threat at all. But I learned, too late, that appearances can be deadly lies. Virel frowned. "What species, Commander?" Tharx's voice dropped even lower. "Humans." The room erupted in confusion. A few cadets laughed. Others looked at each other in disbelief. Humans were barely mentioned in Dominion records. They were considered a minor species, still recovering from their own internal conflicts, barely spacefaring a few centuries ago. Virel shook his head. "Commander, surely you jest. Humans are insignificant. Their worlds are small. Their technology is not superior to ours." Tharx's eyes narrowed. "Do you think I joke about war, cadet?" The laughter died instantly. The commander leaned forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the young soldiers. "You see, I once believed what you believe now. I thought humans were weak. I thought they were prey. But when I faced them in battle, I discovered something I had never seen before, not in the Zark, not in the Taven, not in any enemy across the stars. I discovered a will that would not break." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. The cadets shifted uncomfortably, unsure if they wanted to hear more. But Tharx was already lost in memory. It was years ago. The Dominion was expanding into the Outer Rim, territories filled with small, scattered colonies and minor species. High Command had received reports that one of these planets, a world called Earth, was sheltering rebel traders who opposed Dominion control. To Tharx, it sounded like a simple mission: crush the rebels, claim the planet, and move on. His fleet numbered 20 warships, cruisers and destroyers bristling with weapons. The enemy? As far as intelligence reported, nothing more than outdated planetary defenses and perhaps a handful of small craft. When his fleet emerged from hyperspace near Earth, the first thing Tharks saw was the planet itself. A blue and green sphere, smaller than many worlds he had conquered, wrapped in a thin veil of clouds. Primitive. One of. His officers scoffed, but then the sensors picked up something strange. Massive metallic structures in high orbit. They were stationary, unmoving, their shapes unlike any warship Tharks had ever seen. They looked like crude space stations, said the sensor officer. The crew laughed. Easy prey, they thought. Then one of the stations moved. The structures, long panels folded inward, revealing a hull of dark metal, sleek and predatory. Its engines burned with a pale blue flame, but the ship made no sound across the comm channels, only the silent message of its movement. Before the Dominion fleet could react, the station hailed them. The voice was calm, cold, and carried, a weight Tharks had never heard before. "You've made a mistake." And then the transmission ended. Tharks broke from his memory and looked around at the cadets. That, he said slowly, was the first time a single sentence ever made. "Me feel uneasy. I didn't know it then, but that voice was human, and we were about to learn what that meant." The young soldiers were silent now. No one dared laugh. "Commander," Virel said carefully, "was it only one ship?" Tharks's mandibles clicked in amusement, though there was no joy in his tone. "No, cadet. There were more, many more, and each one was waiting for us." He stood, towering over the cadets, his shadow stretching across the hall. "You want to know who the most dangerous enemy is? I will tell you the story. I will tell you how humans fight. And when I am done, you will understand why I have never feared any other species but them." The cadets exchanged uneasy glances. The hall felt colder somehow, though no doors had opened. Tharks's gaze hardened, and his voice took on the rhythm of a soldier reliving old wounds. "It began on the day the sky burned," he said, "and it has haunted me ever since." The memory came back to Commander Tharks as clear as if it had happened yesterday. His fleet hung in the cold dark above the blue and green planet the humans called Earth. At first it looked peaceful, small clouds drifting over oceans, green land masses glowing under sunlight. But the stillness was a lie. Those strange metallic shapes in orbit were not harmless space stations. The one that had moved was only the first to reveal its true form. All around the planet, more stations began to shift and unfold, each transforming into a warship. Some were long and sharp, shaped like blades of black metal. Others were massive and blocky, their hulls bristling with weapon ports. Tharks's sensors picked up heavy shielding and advanced armor plating, materials the Dominion didn't expect such a young species to possess. "They are warships," the sensor officer said, his voice tight. "That is impossible," another officer snapped. "Humans cannot build vessels of this size. They are too primitive." Tharks said nothing. He had fought too many battles to ignore his instincts, and those instincts told him the Dominion's intelligence was wrong. Very wrong. Then, a second human transmission came through. This time, it was visual. A man appeared on the main screen, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark uniform with a silver emblem on the chest. His skin was pale, his eyes cold and sharp. "This is Captain Elias Rourke of the United Terran Fleet," the human said. "You have entered restricted space. Leave now or be destroyed." A murmur of disbelief ran through the Dominion crew. One officer laughed openly. "They think they can threaten us? They have no idea who we are." Tharks studied the man on the screen. There was no fear in the human's eyes, only certainty. He had seen the same look in elite Dominion captains, the look of someone who had already decided what must be done, no matter the cost. "We will not leave," Tharks replied over the comm. "Surrender your ships and planet to Dominion control. Resistance will be crushed." The human captain's expression didn't change. "Then resistance it is." The transmission ended. It began almost at once. The nearest human ship, sleek and black, suddenly accelerated toward the Dominion line. Its engines flared bright, and in seconds it crossed a distance that should have taken minutes. "Target the lead vessel," Tharks ordered. "Fire at will." A barrage of plasma torpedoes and energy lances streaked across the void, striking the human ship's shields. But instead of slowing, the vessel rolled sideways, avoiding the next volley, and kept coming. Then, with deadly precision, it unleashed its own weapons. Railgun slugs moving so fast, they burned the air molecules they passed. The first Dominion cruiser took the hit broadside. The impact was so powerful, the slug punched through one end of the ship and out the other, leaving a trail of venting atmosphere and fire. Before the wounded cruiser could fall back, the human ship finished it with a missile that broke apart into dozens of smaller warheads, each finding a weak point in the armor. The Dominion officers froze for a moment, shocked. This wasn't random firing. This was surgical destruction. All around the planet, other human ships began to move. Some stayed in close formation, defending key points in orbit. Others went on the attack, diving straight into the Dominion fleet, like hunting predators. Tharks quickly realized they were not fighting like the Zark, who relied on brute strength, or the Tyrell, who depended on confusion and psychic disruption. Humans fought like they had studied the Dominion's tactics, and were countering them step by step. "They know our firing patterns," the gunnery officer muttered. "They're avoiding them before we even shoot." "Adapt," Tharks ordered. "Change formation Delta 7. Force them into the crossfire." The Dominion ships began to shift position, trying to trap the human vessels between two firing lines. It might have worked if the humans hadn't anticipated it. Before the maneuver could close, a pair of human frigates suddenly broke formation, charging directly between two Dominion destroyers. They fired everything they had, tearing through shield emitters and sensor arrays, then veered away just before the Dominion ships could return fire without hitting each other. Tharks's claws dug into the armrest of his chair. These humans weren't just brave, they were willing to take insane risks, and every risk seemed to work. The battle became chaos. Plasma fire lit up the void in blinding flashes. Pieces of broken ships spun away into nothing, wreckage from both. Sides drifted slowly in orbit, casting shadows over Earth's surface. One human frigate, badly damaged and burning, didn't retreat. Instead, it accelerated toward a Dominion battleship, ignoring the pounding it took along the way. At the last moment, its engines flared white-hot, and it slammed straight into the battleship's central hull. The explosion tore the battleship in half. Both halves drifted apart, fire and molten metal spilling into the void. Tharks's crew stared in silence. It wasn't just the destruction, it was the message. Humans would rather die than surrender. Tharks tried to regain control. "All ships regroup and form a defensive wall. We will push them back." But before the order could take effect, something new happened. From the far side of the planet, more human ships appeared, larger than the first wave. They had been hidden in Earth's shadow, waiting. Their sudden arrival trapped the Dominion, fleet between two forces. The humans closed in fast. They weren't rushing blindly, they were herding the Dominion ships, pushing them into narrower and narrower space, forcing them into firing arcs they couldn't avoid. Tharks realized then that they had underestimated not only human technology, but human planning. This wasn't a desperate defense. This was a trap that had been prepared long before the Dominion arrived. The fighting grew worse. Every time the Dominion destroyed a human ship, two more seemed to take its place. And every Dominion ship that fell weakened their own defensive line, letting the humans press harder. Tharks's second-in-command leaned close. "Commander, we must retreat before the fleet is destroyed." Retreat. The word tasted like ash in Tharks's mouth. He had never fled a battle before. But looking at the tactical display, he knew there was no other choice. "Signal the fleet," he said. "Full retreat. Cover each other's escape." The order went out. Dominion ships began to break off, engines roaring as they dove for the safety of hyperspace. The humans didn't chase far. They stayed close to Earth, ensuring the invaders were gone. When Tharks's own cruiser jumped to light speed, the last thing he saw on the view screen was Captain Rourke's face appearing once again. The human didn't speak. He only stared at Tharks with those same cold, certain eyes. Back in the Grand Hall of Valor, Tharks's voice was heavy as he finished the memory. That was my first encounter with humans. We outnumbered them 3-1, yet we lost. And they fought as if every ship, every soldier, every moment was their last chance to live. The cadets sat in stunned silence. None of them were laughing now. Virel spoke softly. But it was just one battle, wasn't it? Tharks's gaze darkened. One battle was enough to know what they were capable of. But it was not the end. The Dominion High Command refused to learn the lesson. They would face the humans again, and they would pay far more dearly. He looked at the cadets one by one. Remember this. Strength is not only in numbers or weapons. Sometimes it is in the heart of those who refuse to fall. That is the strength of humans. The room was silent for a long time. Tharks leaned back in his chair. Next time, I will tell you what happened when we tried to strike back. Commander Tharks leaned back in the Grand Hall of Valor, recalling the moment that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The first encounter with humans had been terrifying, but nothing compared to what came next. Months after the disastrous battle near Earth, the Dominion was determined to assert its dominance. High Command refused to accept that humans could resist. They believed the first loss was a fluke, a combination of underestimating the enemy and bad luck. So they planned a massive retaliatory strike, a fleet stronger than any the Outer Rim had ever seen. Tharks was ordered to lead it. The fleet left Dominion space in perfect formation. Hundreds of warships of all classes, cruisers, battleships, and destroyers moved through hyperspace toward Earth. Every ship was loaded with the latest weapons, shields reinforced, engines at maximum power. Tharks had his doubts. He had seen the humans in battle before, and he had studied their tactics. They were not like other species. They adapted quickly, learned fast, and never hesitated. They were unpredictable in ways that even the Dominion's top strategists could not imagine. "Commander," his first officer said nervously, "the humans cannot possibly resist us. Our fleet is 3 times the size of theirs. We will crush them." Tharks shook his head slowly. "I have faced them once. Do not mistake their size for weakness. They will fight harder than any enemy I have ever known." The officer frowned, but said nothing. Tharks had the authority of the High Command and the respect of all fleet officers. They would follow his orders, but few of them believed him. As the fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Earth, the first warning came from the sensors. Something moved in orbit. Ships, yes, but also unknown objects, invisible to the naked eye until they shifted. "They are hiding," Tharks muttered. "They are waiting for us." The Dominion fleet formed a wide attack line, preparing for the humans to reveal themselves. And then it happened. The sky burned. From every direction, human ships emerged. They were larger in number than before, more organized, and armed with weapons that the Dominion had never seen. Their energy weapons fired in controlled bursts, avoiding overkill while small fighter craft darted through the fleet, targeting weak points with precision. Tharks's heart pounded. He had seen victories and defeats before, but nothing like this. The humans were not fighting to survive, battle. They were fighting to survive as a species. The first Dominion cruiser to engage was obliterated within minutes. A human frigate had approached at impossible speed, firing a combination of missiles and railguns. The cruiser's shields failed under the coordinated assault. Explosions tore it apart, sending fragments spinning into nearby ships. "Pull back," Tharks ordered. But the humans anticipated it. They moved as if they were one organism, covering each other, drawing the Dominion ships into traps. Tharks realized with horror that the humans were studying them even as they fought, learning every pattern, every weakness, every reaction. As the battle raged, Tharks noticed something new and terrifying. The humans were using themselves as weapons. One damaged frigate, its shields almost gone and its engines smoking, charged straight at a Dominion battleship twice its size. Tharks held his breath as the frigate collided with incredible force. The explosion tore the battleship apart, and the frigate disintegrated in the fireball. The Dominion officers were shocked. "They are suicidal," one cried. "No," Tharks said quietly. "They are strategic. They sacrifice one ship to save 10, or destroy one enemy to gain the advantage. They are not reckless. They are calculated." Hours passed. The Dominion fleet, despite its size and firepower, began to falter. Their attacks were coordinated, yes, but for every ship destroyed, 2 more humans seemed to appear. It was as if the humans had an endless supply of reinforcements, or perhaps they had mastered movement through stealth that the Dominion could not track. Tharks's cruiser was hit multiple times, forcing him to divert power from weapons to shields. His second-in-command shouted warnings, reporting the destruction of several other cruisers. The sky above Earth was littered with burning ships, some drifting like wounded animals, others spinning uncontrollably into the void. Retreat is impossible, Tharks realized. They are controlling the battle. They are hunting us. Then came the moment that would haunt Tharks forever. A squadron of human fighters dove straight through a gap in the Dominion line. Each ship fired with deadly precision, striking key power nodes and shield generators on multiple ships. The Dominion fleet tried to respond, but the humans were always one step ahead. Every attempt to flank, to trap, to ambush was countered. Perfectly. Even worse, the humans were learning from the battle in real time. Every tactic the Dominion used was studied, adjusted to, and then used against them in the next strike. One cruiser fired a massive energy cannon at the humans, hoping to destroy several ships at once. The humans split, sending decoys in different directions. The cannon's blast missed every real target, leaving the Dominion ships vulnerable. Tharks gritted his teeth. He had fought in the bloodiest wars of the galaxy, seen the most ruthless enemies, and commanded victories against overwhelming odds. But this was something else. "They are fearless," he muttered. "They do not surrender. They do not retreat. They do not yield." A sudden alert blared in the control room. "Commander, multiple ships have breached the outer defense. They are heading toward the command core." Tharks's claws tightened around the armrest. His mind raced. They could not allow the humans to reach the core. They would lose control of the entire fleet. "Deploy interceptors," he ordered. "Cover the core. Do not let them through." Even with all precautions, a single frigate penetrated the line. It fired a concentrated energy blast that disabled 2 cruisers instantly. The explosion was visible even on the view screens of ships several kilometers away. Hours turned into a brutal day. Dominion ships were burning, spinning, and breaking apart. Human ships, despite being smaller and fewer in size overall, struck with precision that made every attack count. By the end of the day, Tharks realized something terrifying. The humans had not just fought. They had taught the Dominion a lesson in war. The fleet began to retreat. Tharks gave the order reluctantly, knowing that trying to regroup would only cause more losses. As his flagship jumped to hyperspace, he saw Captain Rourke's face appear again on the comm screen. No words were exchanged this time, just a look, cold, certain, unyielding. Tharks knew that in that silent glance the human was saying something he had never heard from any other enemy. "We will survive. And you cannot stop us." When the Dominion ships returned to their space, High Command demanded explanations. But Tharks said only this: "They are not ordinary. They are not weak. Every battle, every tactic, every victory we think we achieve, they learn, adapt, and come back stronger. We do not face mere humans. We face a force of nature. Some officers laughed at his warning, refusing to believe that such a minor species could threaten the Dominion. But Tharks knew better. He had seen it with his own eyes. Humans were not just soldiers. They were predators of a kind the galaxy had never encountered. Back in the Grand Hall, Tharks's gaze swept over the cadets. He let them absorb the silence before speaking again. "That was the day the sky burned," he said. "And it will not be the last time humans showed their power. They taught me that fear is not about size or technology or numbers. Fear comes from knowing you face something you cannot fully predict, something you cannot easily defeat. That is humans." Varel swallowed hard. "But, Commander, how can such a small species do all this?" Tharks's mandibles clicked softly, his voice grave. "Small? Perhaps. But in courage, in strategy, in heart, they are greater than any enemy I have ever faced. Do not ever underestimate them. If you do, it will be the last mistake you make." The cadets sat silently, imagining the day the sky burned above Earth. The image was horrifying, yet awe-inspiring. Tharks's words had planted a seed, one that would grow into a deep respect, and perhaps fear, for the humans they had never met. Tharks leaned back, exhausted even in memory. The day had been long, brutal, and unforgettable, and the war was only beginning. Commander Thark sat quietly in his quarters, staring at the battle maps projected in front of him. The memory of Earth and its human defenders still burned in his mind. He had led the largest fleet the Dominion had ever assembled, and yet, even with overwhelming numbers, the humans had survived. They had struck again and again, teaching the Dominion a lesson in humility and fear. But the High Command refused to listen. They were proud, arrogant, and certain that their empire could not be challenged by a small, insignificant species. Tharks knew the cost of ignoring the humans would be higher than anyone could imagine. Weeks later, Tharks received new orders. The Dominion would strike back, this time deep into human space. They planned to destroy shipyards, research facilities, and orbital defenses to prevent Earth from producing more warships. The fleet assembled was larger than before, with more than 500 vessels. Every ship was armed with experimental weapons and reinforced shields. The Dominion was determined that nothing could stand in their way. Tharks looked at his officers, noting the confidence in their faces. None of them had faced the humans personally, and they laughed at his warnings. "Commander," one said, "this time we will teach them their place. Humans are weak. Their last defense was only a fluke." Tharks shook his massive head. "No, officer. This time they are expecting us, and they have had months to prepare. Do not mistake arrogance for strength." The fleet launched into hyperspace, and within hours they arrived at Earth's system. The planet looked peaceful from orbit. Blue oceans, green forests, and white clouds, completely ordinary. But Tharks knew better. The humans were waiting. The first sign of danger came when Dominion scouts reported unusual energy readings near the outer planets. Massive objects cloaked by advanced stealth technology were moving in formation. Tharks's sensors struggled to identify the ships, but he could feel the threat in his bones. "They are more prepared than before," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Expect anything." The Dominion fleet approached cautiously, forming defensive patterns. But humans did not attack immediately. They were patient, waiting for the perfect moment. Then it began. From the shadows of the asteroid belts, human ships emerged in precise waves. They did not rush blindly into battle. Instead, they used feints, decoys, and carefully timed strikes. Every Dominion maneuver was countered, every trap anticipated. The battle became a nightmare for the Dominion. Cruiser after cruiser was disabled by coordinated attacks. The humans had learned from the last encounter and had evolved tactics faster than Tharks had ever seen. One Dominion battleship fired a massive energy cannon to destroy a group of human frigates. The humans split into smaller groups, drawing the blast away from their main fleet. The cannon missed entirely, leaving the battleship exposed. Within seconds, several smaller human ships fired precise shots at its weak points. Explosions tore the ship apart, and debris rained across the Dominion formation. Tharks barked orders, trying to regain control. "Form Delta 5, focus fire on the lead ship. Do not let them divide our fleet." The Dominion fleet moved as one, but the humans were already adjusting. They flowed around the Dominion ships, striking weak points and disappearing before the cruisers could respond. Every attack the Dominion launched was anticipated and neutralized. One human frigate, damaged and burning, rammed a destroyer. The explosion was catastrophic, tearing the Dominion ship in half. The frigate survived just long enough to escape into the shadows of the asteroid belt. Tharks realized with horror that humans were willing to sacrifice their own ships for strategic advantage. They treated each loss as a calculation, not a tragedy. Hours turned into days. The Dominion fleet struggled to make progress. Every gain was met with devastating counterattacks. Tharks watched as more ships were destroyed, their metal shells floating lifelessly in the void. In the command room, officers shouted warnings. "Commander, our losses are unacceptable. We cannot continue." Tharks clenched his claws, his voice low but commanding. "We must adapt. Retreat is not an option yet. Learn from them. Observe. Every movement, every decision, they reveal their methods if you watch carefully." But even with careful observation, the humans were unpredictable. Tharks realized that they were not only fighting, they were learning. Each battle made them smarter, faster, and more dangerous. Then came the turning point. From Earth's orbit, a massive fleet of human ships emerged. These were not the small frigates from the first encounter. These were warships the Dominion had never seen. Their hulls were black and sleek, powered by engines that glowed with pale blue energy. They moved silently, but struck with precision that made the Dominion's tactics useless. The humans attacked in waves, each one perfectly timed. Dominion ships fired blindly, but the humans avoided their attacks effortlessly. In moments, multiple cruisers were disabled, and several battleships were destroyed. Tharks realized the humans had become more than warriors. They were tacticians, engineers, and predators all in one. They adapted faster than the Dominion could anticipate, turning every mistake into a trap for the attackers. In one unforgettable moment, a human frigate, badly damaged and surrounded by Dominion ships, accelerated straight into the heart of the formation. It fired every weapon it had, hitting critical systems on 3 ships before exploding itself. Tharks could only watch as the Dominion officers struggled to respond. "They are unstoppable," one shouted. Tharks shook his head. "No, they are not unstoppable. They are human, and they are learning faster than we can destroy them. That is their strength." The fleet began to retreat. Dominion ships jumped to hyperspace one by one, leaving a trail of destruction behind them. Earth remained untouched, its human defenders victorious once again. Back in the Dominion capital, Tharks reported the losses. High Command demanded explanations, but none satisfied the leaders. They blamed bad strategy, miscommunication, and even luck. Tharks said only one thing: "This is no fluke. Humans are not weak. They do not surrender. They do not fear death. Every battle makes them stronger. Ignore them at your peril." Some officers laughed, refusing to believe a minor species could threaten the Dominion. But Tharks knew better. He had seen the humans in action. He had faced them directly, and he understood what the galaxy could not yet comprehend. Humans were not just survivors. They were warriors beyond measure. In the Grand Hall of Valor, Tharks's eyes met those of the cadets. He let them imagine the chaos, the fire, the courage, and the precision of the humans. "That," he said, was the price of underestimating a species. Do not make the same mistake. Do not assume that size, numbers, or technology alone determine victory. Humans fight with something no one else has, something we cannot fully measure. They fight with heart, will, and intelligence combined. And that is what makes them dangerous. The cadets sat silently, absorbing every word. For the first time, they understood. The humans were not just a story, not just a legend. They were real. They were a force to be reckoned with. Tharks leaned back in his chair, exhausted even, in memory. The Dominion had tried to crush the humans, and the humans had survived. They had struck back with cunning, strength, and courage that made the greatest warriors of the Dominion look small and fragile. The war was far from over, Tharks knew. But the lesson was clear. Never underestimate humans. And if the Dominion ever tried to challenge them again, the cost would be unimaginable. The Grand Hall of Valor remained quiet. The cadets stared at Commander Tharks, their minds racing with images of battles they had never seen and enemies they had never met. Virel finally spoke, his voice trembling slightly. "Commander, how can a species like that exist? How can they be so strong?" Tharks's mandibles clicked softly, a sound like warning bells. "Strength is not always visible, cadet. Sometimes it is hidden, waiting for the moment to reveal itself. Humans have that strength, and one day the galaxy will know it too. Pray that day comes not against you." The room was silent for long moments. Then, slowly, the cadets began to leave, carrying the weight of the lesson with them. Tharks watched them go, his thoughts returning to Earth and the humans who had changed the course of his life and the Dominion forever. The day the sky burned would never be forgotten. It was a day of fear, a day of respect, and a day that proved the humans were unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. Commander Tharks sat in silence, the Grand Hall of Valor quiet around him. The cadets had left hours ago, but his mind was still alive with the memory of humans, the species that had changed everything he thought he knew about war. He remembered the first encounter, the day the sky burned, the countless Dominion ships lost, and the humans' relentless courage. But there was one memory that remained sharper than all others, a memory of the humans' final warning. It happened after the second great battle near Earth. The Dominion had retreated, battered and humiliated. Tharks's fleet had suffered, losses beyond anything the High Command could comprehend. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, hundreds of ships lost to a species considered insignificant. The Dominion demanded answers, explanations, excuses, but there were none. Tharks knew the truth. Humans were not just fighters. They were strategists, engineers, predators, and learners all in one. Every mistake the Dominion made was recorded, studied, and turned into advantage. And if they returned, the humans would. Be ready. Tharks's own ship had been damaged during the retreat. The hull was scorched, engines strained, shields flickering. But the worst part was not the damage. It was the message received on the comm channel. The screen flickered to life, and there he saw Captain Elias Rourke again. The man stood tall on the bridge of a human battleship, calm, composed, his eyes full of certainty. Tharks expected a challenge, a threat, perhaps even surrender. But the human said nothing. He only extended a hand across the comm, a gesture that seemed almost simple, almost ordinary. Then he spoke. "Commander Tharks, remember this. If the Dominion returns, we will not stop at victory. We will make sure you remember the cost of underestimating humans." There was no anger in his voice, no shouting, no bluster, just certainty. Tharks felt a chill run down his spine. It was a warning, and one that carried the weight of inevitable consequence. Back in the Grand Hall, Tharks's eyes met the young cadets. He spoke slowly, carefully, letting each word land. "That warning," he said, "was not empty. Humans do not need to threaten you with words or numbers. Their actions speak louder than any fleet, any weapon, any empire. They are not reckless. They are not foolish. And they never, ever stop learning. Virel raised his hand, trembling slightly. Commander, how can a species like that exist? How can they be so strong? Tharks leaned forward, his claws resting on the table. Cadet, strength is not always measured in size, numbers, or technology. It is measured in heart, in will, in the courage to stand against impossible odds. Humans have that strength in abundance. That is why no other enemy I have faced compares to them. The memory shifted again. Tharks remembered the peace summit that followed. The Dominion leaders, embarrassed and fearful, sent delegates to Earth to negotiate. Tharks accompanied them, serving as an observer. He expected tension, perhaps even deceit, but instead he saw humans moving with confidence, their technology far more advanced than any record suggested. Ships that could move silently, shields that could withstand multiple heavy impacts, and weapons precise enough to hit single weak points on enormous vessels. It was not just power, it was discipline, strategy, and intelligence combined. Captain Rourke met Tharks personally during the summit. The man's handshake was firm, his eyes unwavering. Commander, he said simply, remember this. We do not fight for glory. We fight for survival. If anyone threatens our home, our people, or our future, we will respond. And we will not hold back. Tharks nodded slowly. He had faced thousands of foes, but none had ever left him feeling so small, so cautious, and so aware of the true meaning of fear. In the following months, the Dominion tried to plan for the future. They built new fleets, improved weapons, and strengthened defenses. But every plan was incomplete, every calculation flawed. Tharks warned them again and again, humans adapt. Every time they fight, they learn. Every time they survive, they become stronger. High command refused to listen. Pride blinded them. They assumed that size, numbers, and dominance could overcome the unknown. But Tharks knew the truth. The humans were a force of nature, relentless, intelligent, and fearless. Back in the present, in the Grand Hall, Tharks looked at the cadets once more. You may never meet humans, he said. You may never see their ships, hear their weapons, or fight their soldiers. But one day, if you face them or any species like them, you will remember this lesson. Never underestimate the heart of a fighter, no matter how small, weak, or insignificant they seem. He paused. The cadets were silent, hanging on every word. Humans are not gods. They are not invincible, but they are unpredictable. They are relentless, and above all, they are survivors. That is why no one feared humans until I shared my story. Tharks leaned back, exhausted by the memories. The battles, the losses, the warnings, they weighed heavily on him even years later. He had lived through wars across galaxies, faced enemies of incredible strength, and yet it was humans who left the deepest mark on his soul. Virel finally spoke again. Commander, will the Dominion ever defeat them? Tharks's eyes darkened, his voice steady and grave. Perhaps one day. Perhaps not. But if we ever try to conquer them again without respect, without understanding, we will pay the cost. And it will be higher than we can imagine. Remember that, cadet. Remember it well. The cadets left the hall, carrying the weight of Tharks's words. Some whispered among themselves, imagining the humans he had described. Small, fragile, but terrifyingly fierce. Some felt awe, some fear, and some a mixture of both. Tharks remained in his chair alone. His mind drifted back to Earth, to Captain Rourke, to the battles, and to the countless lives lost on both sides. Humans had taught him a lesson that no one else could. Strength is not always what it seems. Courage can come from the smallest of beings, and a species underestimated can change the fate of the galaxy. He sighed, his mandibles clicking softly. In thought, one day, the Dominion, or any other empire, would have to remember his warning. Humans were not just another species. They were a force that the galaxy had never truly faced. And Commander Tharks, the greatest war hero of his people, had learned that lesson in the most painful way imaginable. Outside the Grand Hall, the night sky shimmered with distant stars. Somewhere, out there in the void, humans continued to build, to train, and to survive. Ships moved silently through the darkness, pilots preparing for challenges no one else could foresee. Tharks closed his eyes and whispered softly to himself, "Pray, you never meet them unprepared." And with that, the story ended. The legend of the humans, the small, unyielding species that no one had feared, was now etched into the minds of the next generation. The galaxy would one day know their strength, and until then, every story told by those who had faced them carried a single warning: never underestimate a human. The tale of Commander Tharks concluded in the Grand Hall of Valor, leaving cadets in awe and with a deep respect for a species most of them had never seen. Humans were no longer just a distant curiosity. They were a standard by which all others would be measured.